Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak on interagency collaboration as a strategy to assist persons with intellectual disabilities address the barriers that prevent individuals with disabilities from being full partners in our society. My name is Jeff Frill. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director for Collaborative Services, Workforce Development, and Social Security Programs for the Department of Rehabilitation. And the California Department of Rehabilitation's mission is to work in partnership with consumers and other stakeholders to provide services and advocacy resulting in employment, independent living, and equality for individuals with disabilities. Our department provides a variety of individualized services, including community-based assessments and functional evaluations, which we'll get more deeply into, including vocational training, career guidance, job placement, on-the-job supports, and other services that are necessary to achieve an employment outcome. A little bit about our department. Last year, the Department of Rehabilitation, with 790 counselors, served 110,000 consumers. So just to give you a sense of scale for our department, it's the largest voc rehab program in the nation. Over 33,000 of these consumers are transition aged. Traditionally for us, transition age is 16 to 24. So about a third of our population is actually folks that are transitioning from high school into college or post-secondary employment. And 1,200 of these consumers, this transition age population, are in support employment plans, which would be plans that we develop for typically regional center students that require ongoing supports after we close a case successfully. Today we're going to discuss some of the collaborative programs that Department of Rehabilitation, the Chancellor's Office, and community colleges have established in our efforts to better serve students with disabilities. Work is an important marker of full inclusion and participation in the American economy and its society. Transition-aged youth with disabilities are particularly vulnerable in securing and maintaining employment due to a lack of work experience and vocational training. Studies indicate that secondary students with disabilities drop out of high school at higher rates, have higher absenteeism, have lower GPAs, and have poor self-esteem when compared to the non-disabled peers. Nationally, only 34% of students with intellectual disabilities graduate with a diploma. And even with a diploma, youth with intellectual disabilities demonstrate the lowest rate of paid employment among all youth with disabilities at 30%. My vision for youth with intellectual disabilities begins with establishing high expectations. It is incumbent upon us, educators, service providers, parents and students, and employers to expect more from our state's youth with intellectual disabilities. We need to expect that youth with intellectual disabilities can engage in a broad range of work occupations, not just the few traditional occupations such as janitorial, food service, or office occupations. We should expect that youth with intellectual disabilities can earn wages that can lead to self-sufficiency. Some youth with intellectual disabilities are currently finding employment outside of the traditional occupations, for instance in healthcare, banking, and the federal government, and they're earning better wages in those types of jobs. But we need to do more, and we can do more. First, I think we need to support transition planning at a younger age. Early vocational assessment and training for youth with disabilities prepares the students to successfully access post-secondary services and community integration. We need to coordinate services while students are still in high school. Ideally, educators and families should be linking students to those agencies that are going to assist in providing transition services. DR and other agencies should be utilizing existing assessments whenever possible and have person-centered plans developed before the student exits high school. We need to encourage students to participate in their community. A student's involvement in sports, volunteer work, and clubs develops social capital and provides natural supports. We need to provide work experience and internships for youth with disabilities in high school. Research shows that multiple work experiences in high school is the greatest precursor to successful post-secondary employment outcomes. We need to collaborate with employers. We need to determine the qualifications and skill sets that these businesses require for prospective employees. This allows us to design vocational training programs consistent with the needs of businesses. We need to take advantage of technology. Inexpensive iPads and iPhones have apps that can assist in everything from scheduling to filming mock interviews. We need to be better educated in benefit planning. Too many of our students and their families do not want to explore work because they fear they'll lose financial and medical support. In fact, there are many Social Security work incentive programs that allow students to participate in work without losing their benefits. And finally, we need to develop college options for students with intellectual disabilities. One recent study of vocational rehab outcomes showed that youth with intellectual disabilities who participated in post-secondary education were 26% more likely to work, and those students earned 73% higher income. For the first time, new provisions of the Higher Education Opportunity Act allow students with intellectual disabilities to be eligible for federal financial aid. To be eligible for financial aid, these college programs must be degree, certificate, or non-degree programs to support students with intellectual disabilities or seeking to continue academic and career instruction to prepare for gainful employment. To this end, the Department of Rehab and the Chancellor's Office saw an opportunity to better align our services and meet the post-secondary educational needs of our regional center consumers. So with that, it's my privilege to introduce Dr. Catherine Campisi, who will talk more specifically about our college to career programs.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you all hear me? Okay, great. I'm Catherine Campisi, and I'm really pleased to be able to be here today. Today I'm here on behalf of the California Health Incentives Improvement Project, known as CHIP, and we have been working with the Tarzan Center to increase opportunities for students with, for youth with intellectual disabilities and autism to attend higher education in California. I'd also add that one of the things about being retired and working part-time is that you end up with multiple hats sometimes. So I would also like to add that I'm also doing some consulting with the California Community Colleges via the Galvin Group, and so I'm really pleased to be able to be here. I'm especially pleased to be here with Jeff and Mark, because we've worked together through the years. 1992, my first job with Department of Rehab, I worked with Jeff in the transition unit. And I think that there's just such a natural partnership between higher education and rehabilitation. And when we talk about college to career, that's what we'll talk about. But how those two pieces of academics and college life and then preparation for work and job placement and development and the supports really help people with disabilities get to where they need to go. So I think our being together reflects that partnership that we've worked on through the years and are still working on to try to do some new and exciting things for youth with intellectual disabilities and autism. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how did we get where we are today, and specifically in California, highlighting our college to career programs, but talking about some of the other both challenges and opportunities, because those are only really at 5 out of 112 community colleges, and many things are going on in other locations, and things will and need to go on in additional locations as well. So Jeff referred to that the work that we've been doing reflects a national and local trend for students with intellectual disabilities and autism to want to be participating in fully included settings post-high school, and namely post-secondary education. Now, when we think about it, that this is the generation, we had a generation plus that has been fully included in K-12 after 94-142 and IDEA, should we be surprised that students with intellectual disabilities and autism want to continue that fully included experience as they go on post-high school? No, I don't think we should. And I think that's what we're reflecting here, is the passion of youth themselves, their families, service providers, to continue this opportunity for integration and full inclusion post-high school, which has come about after a long public policy trend at the national and state levels to show that where integration of people with disabilities happens with people without disabilities, we have better outcomes, we have better chance for employment and a fully integrated life and an independent life. And I would argue that we also enrich our communities, because as we work together and get to know each other better, we all see that our similarities and our commonalities are much greater than our differences. So I think we should not be surprised at this. We should just seize the opportunity, and despite the dire budget times, look for opportunities to advance our agenda. I think the other thing that we've seen in the last year is, as a result of this national trend, and in California as well, are pockets of excellence or pieces of excellence. I know Think College has a map, and it shows where the programs for students with intellectual disabilities and autism post-secondary programs are in California. And we're happy to say that there are a number, in addition to the 5 college to career programs. So I think communities have seized that opportunity and developed programs for students. Jeff referred to the Higher Education Opportunity Act. I think we really cannot underestimate the significance of this major systems change at the federal level. The idea that students with intellectual disabilities would, if they attend the Comprehensive Transition Program, be eligible for federal financial aid is a very groundbreaking change. If you think about, and having come from an academic family, taught in higher education, I think we know that sometimes the campus environment and academia is not quick to change and embrace new ideas. And I think that the work that it took to get this done and to be adopted and to be now national public policy, we cannot underestimate the importance on this. And I'd like to just focus on a couple of the things that are in the Higher Ed Opportunity Act that I think are very critical as we go through today and as we talk about ideas for the kinds of programs we want to build in our communities and strengthen. The things that I note the most when I think of the Act are the organized program of activities, including advising for classes. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's not just a student going to a campus, a community college or other college campus, and sort of randomly taking classes for life enhancement. I mean, that's allowable, and people of all ages and with and without disabilities do that. But it's not the focus of the Higher Education Opportunity Act, and it is not the focus of our college to career programs. A very notable thing is integrated activities at least half the time. So again, we're talking about here the major focus of the reason for students to be in post-secondary education is to be fully included, to participate in expectations, in places where expectations are raised about what they can do, and that we really need to caution ourselves against, and Olivia and all of us have talked about this, in setting up a little special ed program on a community college campus, but a program where students are really in separate, segregated settings throughout the day. So integrated activities at least half the time. And most of all, I would go back to my rehab hat, a focus on an employment outcome. If you look at the Higher Education Opportunity Act, although it's talking about financial aid in college, it talks about resulting in an employment outcome. And so I think those are some of the focuses that we can keep in mind as we move through. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the college to career programs in California that we're very excited about. Can our 5 programs, are you here? Raise your hand so people know where you are. All right, there they are, okay. So given the trend that we've talked about, the national trend, and something that we experienced here in California as well, we knew that the California community colleges were seeing more need for technical assistance and support regarding serving students with intellectual disabilities and autism on California community college campuses, especially in integrated settings. And so several years ago, I think it was 07, 08, but I'm sure Olivia or Will could correct me on the exact year. The Chancellor's Office of the Community Colleges contracted with the Tarzan Center at UCLA to provide technical assistance to the colleges through various mechanisms in order to provide this support. And as part of this work in subsequent years, Olivia and I made some visits to some key state agencies that we were looking to see if there were opportunities for partnership to better serve students with intellectual disabilities and autism on college campuses. We knew that students with intellectual disabilities and autism were attending the California community colleges, but they were often taking whatever classes they could, sometimes for socialization, as we talked about, or they were attending community college classes that were actually held in community settings which were not integrated with non-disabled peers. So there were some community-based facilities for people with disabilities, and the classes were held there. Now, we knew by the numbers that were wanting to go on campus sites that folks wanted to have more inclusive opportunities. We knew on the rehab side that DOR consumers were participating in supported employment and in some other types of work activities, but that both agencies saw an opportunity for better employment outcomes and for improved consumer choice, which I believe was the driver behind the C2C programs. We were really thrilled when our discussion led to, well, let's look into some ideas for participation here, for a greater partnership, for possibly sharing some funding, for leveraging funding that DOR spoke to us about. And out of that was born this pilot project of the College to Career programs. DOR was able to identify funding to fund 5 college programs. And we thought that that was really notable because it was a tough budget time. There, in these last few years, we all know money's not very readily available, and so the idea that we were able to do something new and exciting, but again, with the goal that it would lead to better employment outcomes. And by that, we mean wages that are more self-sustaining, as Jeff said, employment outcomes that are more varied and are not typical, but more reflective of actual consumer choice. So we were thrilled at that. On the community college side, we weren't sure how many applications there would be because there were already very, very drastic reductions in starting in 9-10, the disabled student programs took a 40% reduction in its funding from the budget. And so we were really worried that, you know, how would colleges even entertain doing something new at this point in time? But we were pleasantly surprised, I think, when we thought about it afterwards. We thought, well, you know, given the trend and given the interest in this area, maybe we shouldn't have been surprised. But I believe we had 14 applications, and I see Scott in the back. Is that right, Scott? I hope that's right. Yes. So out of those 14, 5 programs were funded by Department of Rehabilitation. Those 5 programs are Sacramento City College, right here, College of Alameda, Santa Rosa, North Orange Community College District, and San Diego Community College District. It was really hard participating in the selection process because all 14 were excellent applications, and we're really pleased to say that, for example, Long Beach City College went on to develop a program on its own through leveraging money from Regional Center and rehab and college interest, although they were not funded. So it's really exciting. So Mark and Scott Berenson are going to discuss more of the details of these programs, but in the outline is that they're expected to last for around 3 years for consumers. And the goal of the program is that by the end of the 3rd year, students would enter into integrated competitive employment. And we designed the programs very much so that they would reflect the requirements of the higher education opportunity programs. Now, as I said, we know that there's other programs at community colleges. There's a program at CSU Fresno, federally funded, and of course we know about the UCLA program. So we know that a lot more needs to be done in this area, but again, I would keep in mind that we look at the exponential development and expansion of these programs on a timeline. I think Olivia referred to this earlier. We know that this is an idea whose time has come. What seemed impossible, the idea of students with intellectual disabilities going to college, has now become probable and possible. So with creativity, teamwork, patience, and I would argue most of all, a consumer-driven focus, we can accomplish so much more, and that's why we're here today. So it's my pleasure to turn it over to Mark? Scott, okay. Scott Berenson, and let me introduce Scott. He's in your program, but Scott is the coordinator of the disabled student programs at the Chancellor's Office of the California Community Colleges. In addition, he's been a mental health professional, social worker, and also worked as the lead on compliance for special education for Department of Education, excuse me. So Scott Berenson.
It's a pleasure to have finally arrived here today. It wasn't easy. My personal disability is an inability to read maps, and so I've toured the facility. It's very nice. It's an honor to speak before you today, and very ironic for me. I've tried to get my daughter here for the last 3 months, and without success, by the way. So I have penetrated the Mind Institute. And I felt that there might be some sort of cloaking device that was hiding it from me as I wandered around the campus. As Catherine says, we've come a long way in the community colleges toward providing, a decent educational experience, I think. And I think an exemplary educational experience at the C2C campuses. I wish we had 112 of them, because that's how many colleges we have. but we have 5, so it's a start. And I'm here to talk about the other programs that we have at many of our colleges that can assist students with intellectual disabilities. And I want to share, I shared my experience about trying to get in here because the reason my daughter can't come here is my fault. I said the wrong word, I said the wrong phrase, and we were excluded. So I wanted to teach you some phrases to use at the colleges that were the right phrases, that will get you services and that will get you entrance to a program that will benefit your student. And I also did want to mention some of the dirty words that you are not to say. You can think them, it's like the F-bomb. You can think it, but you can't say it. All right. And the first, oops. Help, you've silenced me. Ooh. The first one is really a hallmark of some of our great successes. It's inclusion. Inclusion is a great thing. It's one of the real benefits that a community college has to offer students with intellectual disabilities and autism. They go to school where their peers go. They do what their peers do. That's great. But that is a dirty word. We've said it now, let's forget it. And the reason is, we're aiming higher for the students these days. The community colleges, in addition to being under pressure from underfunding, are under pressure because many institutes in the nation, including the Hoover Institute and others, have criticized us for accepting all comers but not getting them to graduate or be successful. And so we're defining our success at the colleges now by success indicators like transfer to four-year university, graduation, and certainly those are reasonable goals for many of our students who are autistic and who have a normal or beyond normal intelligence. And so saying those words, I want my child to go to UC or go to CSUS, those are good words. Those are things to say. Those will get you services and get your students situated where you want them. We want you to aim for employment outcomes. I can't help it. And there are other success indicators such as certificates of completion, and there's a big emphasis on career technical education in our institutions. And those provide opportunities for all students, especially the intellectually disabled, because they can have, as we do in C2C, a focus on what am I going to do when I get out. And if they can keep that focus, and you mentioned those kind of concerns, what's our plan, then your students will experience greater success. And what we want to avoid is what we used to do in the old days. Sometimes in the interest of inclusion, we would have a student with intellectual disabilities. Oh, and when I say the old days, I mean last week. I just answered a call like this where a parent wanted their daughter to go to community college and got him successfully in. And she attended art classes, which she loved, and she failed them. And so after 2 semesters, she was exited from the school. And that's not that unusual, I think, unfortunately. And it's not what we want to repeat. And that was, if you say the inclusion word, what you get. You could go to PE classes, art classes, whatever the student's interest is, and then they are going to be hung up on, here's another dirty word, minimum academic progress. And if you flunk the classes, then at some point you run afoul of this requirement, and it's a success indicator again. We want the students to pass their classes, and we want them to continue to go to school past 2 semesters. So we need a plan like they have at C2C to do an organized program where they're looking for employment. As soon as you enter the employment world, and also the DSPS world, I want to say, we have DSPS, Disabled Student Program and Services, at every one of our 112 campuses. And one of the things to do immediately is get your student signed up for DSPS, because they can assist their students in many ways that other departments at the campus cannot. And they're particularly good for students with intellectual disabilities. So get them in there, and they're going to do a student educational plan. Make that plan something that they can succeed in. So fill it with classes that they're interested in, and that they're going to get assistance in. Some of the things DSPS can do are provide access to specialized technology, which is very helpful for our students. The latest and greatest, my favorite gizmo is called the Smart Pen, and it remembers things for you, like formulas and stuff, and so it assists our students immensely. And the staff can also do classes where they help the students study and learn study skills, and those are also really valuable. There's some exciting research that has shown that IQ is not fixed, it's plastic, and it can go up by as many as 20 points. So certainly some of those interventions working with working memory can be very valuable as well. And you can access that through DSPS a lot in their learning disabilities classes and things like that. So I really want to steer you, if you want a positive outcome, to DSPS, first of all. And then I also wanted to mention that, as Catherine did, there have been efforts throughout our system that have been exemplary in dealing with students with intellectual disabilities for years. TAFT is, of course, the thing everybody mentions, and I'm not sure if they've been mentioned here today, but that program is a great collaborative between regional centers, Department of Rehab, and the school. And it's a live-in program, so there's a lot of independent living focus, which is valuable. And they keep the employment focus on, and what are you doing when you get out of here after these 3 years, pretty intensely, and that has been effective. They have some staggeringly impressive statistics that verify their success, and they do so in the language of the college. So these students get employed. They do also, with some of the language of the regional center, they also become independent and live independently after they graduate from that program. So that's a nice outcome, but that one again is, you need to pick your programs. For most of the colleges, they're gonna wanna see some sort of minimum progress academically and some sort of movement toward employment. And that enables us to make a link to the Department of Rehab, which is great. We have at 25 of our colleges a Workability 3 program, which is a collaborative program with Department of Rehabilitation that focuses on employment, and it provides the glue really to organize a program for a student to be successful. And so I brought a list of all the colleges that have Workability. I wish again that we had 112 of them, but I'm grateful for the 25 we have, and I would encourage you to look for one of those campuses. In addition to Taft, and I think Taft just made a linkage to a corporation, I believe it's Frito-Lay. That's correct? Okay. And so there really is, a focus and a light at the end of the college tunnel where, employment at a major corporation. So that's very positive. And other colleges are trying to, I wouldn't say copy, because there are a lot of things unique about Taft and that program, but at least use that as an example. And we've got, in addition to our 5 C2C campuses, almost all of the applicants that we got, as Catherine pointed out, and I think there might have even been more than 14 as I think about it, every one of those had existing programs where there were linkages to Department of Rehabilitation and to, usually employment agencies. So I was really impressed with all of them, as was Catherine, and the choice was very difficult. But I would say that our list of the applicants is probably a nice list of sort of the leading lights in our system that have been doing things for a while. And the ones I can remember offhand are State Center around Fresno. Fresno City Unified is in that district. City College of San Francisco. Certainly the 5 C2C campuses that Catherine mentioned. Sonoma's got a great horticulture program where they have linkages to local orchards, nurseries, and some places so the students can get work experience while they go to school and get academic and soft skills and all the things we want to get them that they get from inclusion. Remembered not to say that word. That they are also going to get on an employment-focused program. And so I think in these days of emphasis at our colleges, talk about career, technical experience, and education, and employment opportunities, and that you want those for your students, and you'll get a lot more assistance and be able to access the departmental collaboration that we're trying to facilitate today between Department of Rehab, the colleges, and the regional centers. Let's see, I think that's all my prepared remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Well, unlike Scott, I actually hope the microphone goes mute on me. But if it doesn't, I'll try to get through this presentation. First of all, I'm flattered to be included in such a prestigious panel. And I hope I don't bring the prestige of it down too much. So Scott and Jeff and Catherine, if I have, I'm sorry. But what I'm here today to talk about is what does the Department of Rehabilitation do, or what can it do, how we do it, and what does it look like on a local level. And hopefully, with the time permitting, I'll try to describe how it looks like on an individual level. So in effect, I want to talk about the what, the where, and the how. Since where is the easiest, since I'm a local service provider as a Department of Rehabilitation District Administrator, I say it starts locally. It starts with the family, it starts with the school district, and it starts with the individual. With the Department of Rehabilitation, it also starts locally. And what we need to do on a local level is go out and educate both the service providers, family members, schools, and anybody that may have an interest in serving individuals with intellectual disabilities or autism, and let them know what it is we do. So, and I see a lot of people out here. If you haven't had a connection, or if you haven't connected yet with your local Department of Rehabilitation office, I encourage you to do so. And tell them Mark sent you. Won't mean anything, but they'll confuse them a little. And again, why we get out in the community and why we talk and present Department of Rehabilitation services to everybody that will listen is because I'm a bit selfish. My goal really is, in my profession from the very beginning, is to introduce a different vocabulary to junior high students and their families, and high school students and families of individuals with disabilities, particularly intellectual disabilities and autism. And this vocabulary would include words like work, careers, employment, success, independence, and my personal favorite, paycheck. Once you start thinking about that, the possibilities of that paycheck, of that independence, of getting out there and working, nothing else will suffice. People will drive towards that direction if they see the possibilities. So what is it that the department does? What is it that we do to make a difference? Since you're all here and I haven't been able to market rehab to all of you yet, I'm going to do so right now. What we do for the Department of Rehabilitation is assist individuals with disabilities to obtain, maintain, and retain meaningful employment and careers based on their informed choice. And we work with a lot of individuals that have multiple barriers to employment. For example, individuals with intellectual disabilities and autism are going to have a variety of impacts. And these will vary from very mild to very significant. So the Department of Rehabilitation counselor needs to go out there and do an accurate and effective assessment and evaluation of the individual. When you were working with somebody with intellectual disability or with autism, we really, as a counselors, really need to, first of all, assess the individual's ability to communicate, both to express and receive information. What is their individual's ability to learn and retain information? For example, work instructions. What is their attention span? What is the individual's ability to control their impulses? What is their stamina, work tolerance? What is their motivation and desire to work? What is their attitude and approach towards employment? What is their confidence? What are their social and interpersonal skills? How do they do with time management? And equally important, how do they know how to get from one place to the other? If they can't get to work, nothing else really matters. So the counselors assessed all those individuals' issues or concerns, but that's only half the picture. What's equally important is is the individual's strengths, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, capabilities, and interests. Now we have the whole picture. We have the individuals, what impediments the individual may have, but also where do they want to go? And what do they have, what tools do they have to get there? So after a comprehensive assessment, the Department of Rehabilitation counselor now has to develop a plan. And they don't develop a plan independent of the client or the consumer. They work in conjunction with the individual with a disability and their representatives, family members, individuals that may already be serving, or agents that may already be serving the individual. So when we develop a plan, we make sure that it's realistic, that it's achievable, that it's feasible, and that we as a department can provide actual services to allow that individual to get where they want to go. So when we develop a plan, we want to make sure that we approach it from two different ways. One of it is intrinsic, related to the individual's skills, knowledge, behaviors, or capacities, and the other is external. And then what I mean by external is factors that need to be changed around the individual. For example, there may be transportation barriers, attitudinal barriers, like an employer's unwillingness to consider hiring somebody with an intellectual disability or autism. Improving access to an employment site. You know, it may be as much as putting a ramp in or removing a step. It may include job carving, finding out what the individual can do, and then finding out what the employer needs and making a match. We may do education and training of managers and coworkers on how to communicate with someone with intellectual disability or autism, how to maybe address behaviors, and how to provide support to the individual at the workplace. So how do we, and so then the what do we do includes our actual services. And these can include counseling and guidance, external situational assessments, personal vocational social adjustment, job development, job seeking skills, training, job placement, transportation, for example, mobility training to have somebody learn how to use the bus system, transportation, maybe providing gas money or bus passes to pay for the transportation, medical restoration services. Somebody may need some durable medical equipment to be able to perform work at the work site. Maybe on-the-job paid training, or maybe on-the-job job coaching. Maybe vocational skills training, learning a trade, and maybe training in education, and that's what the focus will be on today's conference. Books and supplies and learning materials for somebody to be able to participate in their education, like digital recorders, software, calculators, computers. Work tools, if somebody needs a tool belt with tools, that's a service we can provide. And rehabilitation technology, communication devices, accessibility aids such as software, hardware, or other adaptive equipment necessary for the person to participate in training or work. Clothing, shoes for work interviews or for work. We can do advocacy, intervention, training, both of the employers and co-workers as well as the community at large. Relocation, if somebody has a job offer in San Diego, we'll help them move to San Diego to accept that job. And work permits, if they need a license or a permit, or they want to be a truck driver, they need a Class A license, we would pay those fees. So as you see, we can provide a wide variety of services, and this is not an all-inclusive list, but they told me I only had 10 minutes or less, so I'll stop there. But as a counselor, I always joke that we could basically provide anything with an appropriate rationale. I mean, if somebody, there's a couple exceptions in law, but basically, those are very limited. Basically, if you have a good enough rationale, the Department of Rehabilitation will provide that support for that individual to go to work. But we know, with all the services and all that we can provide, we don't do it alone. And we're very fortunate, and I'll address it to the local level, but statewide, we're very fortunate to have a lot of really great partnerships. And like just looking out in the crowd, I see a lot of our partners locally here, and you're fantastic, by the way. We love everything that our relationship means to both our clients and to our department, and I want to thank you for that. Because our local partnerships are critical in our success. We couldn't possibly serve in the district everybody that we serve right now without our partnerships. We wouldn't be as successful as we are without all our partnerships. And our partnerships include employers, include local vendors and service providers. They include high schools, County Office of Education, county mental health programs, and our community colleges. And not only do our partnerships help us provide services, but many of our referrals come from our partners as well. And if a college disabled students program identifies a student that could benefit from services, we're thrilled with that referral. And we encourage that referral because that's our target population, that people who are getting training towards employment. So our partnerships are only effective if they're developed appropriately and that they're maintained appropriately. For us in the district, it was real important to establish that we have a common vision and direction. So are we heading in the same direction? We needed both partners to understand what our goal is. And our goal is service to our consumers. We have to make sure we establish trust. And then establish a way that we share information both efficiently and effectively, and taking into consideration the client's rights to keeping their personal information confidential. But one thing that's interesting, we also need to know what each other's grievance process is. And it sounds funny that we're talking about complaints, but if somebody doesn't know what their rights are and how to elevate issues, they will quit. And so we want to know, if they have an issue with DSPNS, where do they go with that? And we want the DSPNS staff to know when they have an issue with the Department of Transportation, where to go with that. And in many cases, it's me in the district, but that's okay. I like hearing from clients, from our consumers. But most importantly, all our partnerships have one thing in common, and that is we've moved from cooperation to collaboration. Collaboration means, to us anyway in the department, a mutual engagement of participants in a coordinated effort to solve the problem together. And the goal is together. We're not working side by side, we're working together. And one thing in the district that has worked really well, and it's being able to remain humble. Admit our shortcomings as a department, where we do fall short. Whenever we make a mistake, taking full credit for that mistake and acknowledging that it's on us. Acknowledging our areas of weakness, because in many instances, when you acknowledge your area of weakness, your partner can usually fill that gap, and it's phenomenal when that happens. And then also acknowledge where you need to improve. And not what the problems are, and not to dwell on those, but look at it prospectively. What is it that we can do to improve ourselves? So to describe services in our partnerships, in time permitting, I want to describe an individual's experience with the Department of Rehabilitation and with the community college. I want to describe this consumer's experience, but I'm not going to disclose her name. Well, I'm going to call her Linda. It's not her real name. But this is a real story, and I got this from one of our counselors and looked into it and read the case record, and it was a pretty compelling story. At least it moved me. Linda first applied for service with the Department of Rehabilitation in 2009. She was working with a local regional center, so we were able to contact them and get information about her disability, her impediments to employment, and we were able to determine eligibility quickly because of that. When she applied for services, she was under the age of 21, but, just under the age of 21, but she was still being driven everywhere by her mother. And after application, every appointment and everywhere she went, her mom still drove her for the next 2 years. She was very slight of build, so she looked younger than her age. She was very, very quiet, and then during meetings, her mom would often have to interject to interpret questions for Linda. So when we looked at the records and we assessed where is this individual in terms of their functioning and their capabilities and interests. And so we reviewed the records and found out that she had deficits in expressive and receptive language and self-direction. She had poor adaptive skills. Some of the records also indicated that she had significant deficits in working memory, processing speed, and verbal comprehension. And then we also, of course, we get the IQ score, which indicated that she was, according to the records, in the mild MR range. So when she applied for services, she was already enrolled at a community college. She was there, and like many of our clients, fill their time with activities, but she decided that she was going to occupy her time by attending the local community college and take a yoga class and an American Sign Language class. At the time of the intake, she indicated a desire to possibly work as an ASL interpreter, but after the requirements were described to her, she changed her mind. Fortunately, like many of our consumers have done, she had some previous part-time work experience through her district's Workability One program, and that experience included working with animals and providing childcare for children with autism. She indicated, after some conversations with her counselor, that of all her work experiences, the most fulfilling and the one that she liked the most was was providing childcare, was working with children. So after eligibility was determined, a plan was developed for her to be a preschool teacher. And this was based on mostly on her interests, but also she had transferable skills. She had previous work experience in the area. That was what her preference was. And she did have the abilities and strengths. And even taking into consideration the limitations she may have, this was still an area of strength. So the plan was developed that would include further training and education in order for Linda to obtain marketable and competitive skills. And because she's already had a relationship with the local community college and she was already enrolled, it was determined that she would continue to go to the community college and work towards getting her ECE certificate. Unfortunately, while she was enrolled in school, she was having some difficulties maintaining her status as a student in good standing. Even though she was attending part-time, she was still having a difficult time passing the classes. While she was enrolled, we were very fortunate as a district that a new program, a new pilot started called the College to Career program. And immediately, Linda was identified as somebody who could benefit from the support of the C2C. And so a referral was made, and an intake was done, and she was accepted in the program, and she started working. She continued to, with that support, she continued to receive school support services from DOR, so we continued to pay for her classes and provide her some support. And she began to work with the C2C program. With her enrollment in C2C, it opened up a lot of additional support for her. She was offered meaningful additional support from the staff, which included academic coaching, identification and support for work experience, internships, and eventual placement. Because she had remained dependent on her parents for transportation and they continued to drive her to and from classes, which was a concern for us, it was determined that she could possibly benefit from mobility training. And so that was provided. When she completed her mobility training, it was reported to us that Linda now gets to and from school independently. She's no longer driven. she gets herself there. And for me, that's a big win. I mean, that's an intermediate objective. That's a forward progress. And using the NASCAR analogy, that's one of the checkered flags. With the academic counseling and educational coaching support provided by the C2C program, she has just recently completed all of her ECE courses. And so she's able to get her associate teacher certificate. And she was excited. She said at the end of that semester, she was actually going to ask for a paper copy of it so she could have it with her. Again, another checker flag, win. When she completed her training, even though she completed her ECE credits, she continues to be enrolled as a college student, still working with the C2C program. But now she's getting childcare experience, both for experience and for school credit. Again, that's fantastic experience. That demonstrates not only she's heading in the right direction, but she gets to practice what she wanted, which is working the profession as a childcare employee. And again, that's another win. That's another step along the way towards success. On campus, it's not just the C2C program support, but the C2C program and the DSP&S staff on campus have also already connected with the other resources on campus because she's a student. So she's entitled to services from the College Career Center. They already know that she's going to be coming to them soon for placement and assisted with job search. In the department, we will continue to provide services, and we're just waiting to get her interview clothing. We're trying to identify whether or not she'll need job coaching on the job to learn a new job. If she does, that will be available for her. We'll provide her counseling and guidance if she's having difficulties or she's discouraged in her job search. But we'll also, if necessary, we'll pay for on-the-job training. If an employer wants to hire but says, we can't hire somebody new because we don't have the time to train or the staff to train, we can reimburse the training costs directly to the employer. And again, that will be available to her from the department. So, the closing email, the line in the email from the counselor said that the counselor believes that she will be the first DOR, Regional Center, College C2C participant in our district to be successfully closed. And if she does, then that's the checker flag, and that's a win-win-win for all of us, and it's very, very exciting. But, you know, I mean, and as a department and as the staff of C2C, we've had the opportunity from she very first came in, you know, quiet and, you know, basically needing to depend on her mom. We've seen her confidence grow. We've seen this young lady mature, gain a lot of confidence, and then achieve her goal after goal after goal. I mean, she completed her ECE. She's able to travel independently now. She's working now and getting school credit for work experience. I'm really confident that she's going to continue to thrive. And so even though Linda has been the one receiving services, I think that as a department, and me just reading about the story, I feel that she's given so much back to us. And in fact, I feel like we've been the recipients of all the good news. And it's very energizing and motivating. And I really hope that everybody that's worked with her feels the same way. But in closing, I really consider each of us in our own roles, whether it's a counselor, teacher, parent, mentor, or friend, that the individuals that we work with really give so much back. And it's energizing, and it's exciting, and it's that reward for everything that we do. And I don't have any doubt that any employer who hires Linda and anybody that follows her in the path will feel the same way. And I think they'll be very, very fortunate because they're us. These clients are all of us and everything that we do. So thank you, and we're going to, depending on time, we're open to any questions you may have. So thank you.
One thing, and I love the collaboration because that's where it's at. I mean, you're like a force multiplier when you do that. One area that I think is a gap for my clients is the process. Let's say the DOR process is not set up for people on the spectrum to be successful. Accessing DOR has time limits. You've got to respond in this many days or your case gets closed. Well, anybody that's worked with people on the spectrum know that they have problems with time management, meeting deadlines, and they did an exhaustive literature search recently in Missouri and found out the three things that you know, the higher functioning and the adult population on the spectrum respond to are prompts, schedules, and supports. And I think those need to be integrated into the Department of Rehab processes so that people on the spectrum can successfully use your services, successfully access your services, if there's a way of doing that, you know. Anyway.
No, and that's a great point. And if you have somebody or an individual who, for whatever reason, their case was closed because they didn't meet deadlines or they didn't communicate or they didn't respond, there's two things. I mean, in our district particularly, if that person just calls their counselor and says, I'm available now, I'm still interested in services, I don't think we've ever not reopened the case. But that person has to make that contact, and their representative can make that contact as well if you're acting as a representative. Secondly, an individual has a right to reapplication. At any point, somebody feels that they're ready at that point, they can reapply for services, even though they will never be denied a reapplication. But what you're really talking about is also educating, training, and supporting our counselors in understanding the needs of individuals with autism and intellectual disabilities across the spectrum. And we are doing that. Autism is one of the things that you know, I mean, we have a lot of counselors here today. Actually, I think we have a couple counselors from our district here today and another DOR staff. And part of their participation here is to listen, learn, and bring information back. So it is educational for us. And we do, you know, in our profession, it is extremely complicated, and we do deal with a lot of information. And in changing information, but absolutely, I would not discourage somebody from reapplying if they need to reapply, or just contacting the counselor again, and we'll reopen the case. But we will work on that education as well. So I took a note, and I really appreciate the comment.
We probably have time for one or two more.
Okay, thank you. Hi, excuse me. My name's Linda Curtin. I'm a parent of a daughter with Down syndrome. In terms of the Department of Rehabilitation, it's never once come up in conversation in any IEP or through any regional center representative. In her 18 years of education. So, and I know you talked about being part of the schools, but it's never ever been discussed by anyone in her whole life history.
Well, may I ask what regional center?
San Diego?
Okay. We have an MOU now with our local regional centers in our district that describes our services and that does cross-training of all regional center case carriers. And so that's one way we're hoping that when they go to the IEPs or when they have conversations with parents, that's part of the dialogue, and that they provide accurate information, not to say, oh, go to rehab, that they can actually describe why you would need to go to rehab. I would, and I apologize. I mean, we really have limited resources. I mean, in my district alone, we have 53 counselors, but we have 58 local education. County Office of Education or high school districts. So it's really hard to get out into all of them.
If the collaboration happened sooner, it would benefit your department and it would benefit employability if there was more outreach to the teachers and the people involved with the education. So because the teachers grasp at things on how to develop an education plan to provide future employability for their students, and they just grasp at things and they don't have like a roadmap. So I think it would benefit you and expedite your resources and make things better for everyone.
The Department of Rehabilitation and California Department of Education have been putting on a whole series of trainings collaborative trainings to special educators, SELPA directors, to really educate parents and families on the resources that are available from adult agencies. It's really primarily the teacher's responsibility in special education to link students to the most appropriate adult provider for services. And a transition plan that includes employment for a person with disability, it's kind of unfathomable that DR hasn't come up, at least in that conversation, because DR is typically the agency that's identified for employment services. I would ask that you work with the school district as well. If it's happening to your child, it's probably happening to a lot of students in that district. I'm a little surprised because San Diego has a pretty robust transition program, actually. So, beg your pardon? Oh, Poway. Okay. But that's where it needs to start. I think we need to educate teachers because teachers can develop that transition plan and can orient parents and students to the appropriate adult services. If we don't know about the student, it's hard for us to intervene.
The UC Davis Mind Institute was created in 1998 with a promise to find cures for neurodevelopmental disorders. Every day, our physicians and researchers come closer to fulfilling that promise. Their groundbreaking research on autism, Fragile X syndrome, chromosome 22q11.2 deletion syndrome, ADHD, and other brain disorders are helping children achieve their fullest potential. Please visit our website to find out more about current studies, upcoming events, and how you can help make a difference.